Hi, welcome to Personal Finance and Coffee Podcast. I'm your host, Gabriella, and we're going to talk all about finances because each and every one of us is the CEO of our money. No more waiting for someone else to figure it out. We're going to get hands-on and get our money in order. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about making your first budget. And budgeting is the foundation of personal finance. It all begins with telling your money where to go and what to do. Being intentional, not waiting for mid-month and you're like, where did the money go? So how do you make the first budget? If you're like, okay, I've been hearing about budgets, but I've never made one. How do I start? This is the podcast for you. This is what this podcast is all about. Now, the starting point is income and then expenses. There are different types of budgets. There is the zero-based budget. This means that you allocate money to, you distribute all the money that comes in minus all the money that goes out is zero. In short, you've assigned a job to all the money you make. Then there's the 50, 20, 30. Yeah, that in terms of percentages, you save 20%, you spend 50% on your essentials and then 30% on your wants. Then there is and there are different types of budget. So personally, the one that I use is the zero-based, where I give all the money that I earn a job. The first step is, how much do you make? Write it down. Then write down your expenses, your savings. You can start with, there's a principle of pay yourself first. You can say, the first thing I do is tithe. I give money. That is one way. You can say the first thing I do is save. I save 10%, 20% of my income. And then after you've tithed, after you've saved, then you can now add the fixed expenses. That's where you'll have the rent, the water, the power, the loan, all those other expenses. And then you'll have the variables, the food, the transport, and all that. So that is basically what a budget is. This is how much I make. This is where I want it to go. Now, after you've made that budget, the first time you make that budget, it won't be accurate because you're like, especially when it comes to things like food and social activities and transport, you're like, I think I spend this much. So after you've made the budget, the next step is to keep refining it and keep improving it so that it reflects an accurate picture of what you want your money to do for you. Making this budget, that is, so the first budget you make is you're kind of having a feel of where you're at and kind of what you want to do. Now, in that first month after you've made it, then you need to start tracking. You're like, you've made your budget, so now you start, every time you spend money, you write where you've spent it so that you're able to see, okay, I said under food, I'm going to spend this much. Did I spend that much, or did I spend more, or did I spend less? Now, after you've tracked, you'll compare with the budget you made. Then you're like, okay, I think my estimate for food was underestimated. So you adjust it. Now, this may take you maybe like 3 to 4 months of trial and error. till you get, sometimes activities will come up that you had not anticipated. You'll have a medical bill come up, you'll have a get together, you will have maybe a funeral, you will have things will come up that you had not anticipated, that you had not planned for. But as you track where your money went, you will see what items to add into your budget next time, because probably when you were making it the first time you forgot about them, or it just didn't cross your mind. So that's why I'm saying that the first budget you make is not accurate. After you make that budget, you track it. So it might take you like 3 or even longer, depending. Now, after you're like, okay, I have a feel of it, this budget can also help in anticipating. Like, there are things that shouldn't surprise us. Christmas is in December every year. You find that every year you go to the village. But every time it's Christmas time, all of us are surprised. We're like, hey, it's December. Christmas is here. So now, um, if the budget is in order and you have the income, now you can take it a step further and you're like, okay, every month I'm going to set aside a small amount of money. So by the time it's Christmas, the money adds up. Those are sinking funds. So now the budget starts to to project and cover expenses that previously would make you borrow or would like kind of disturb the whole process. Yeah, so that is how you start, pretty much. Where the next question people usually ask is, okay, where do I put this budget? Where do I make this budget? Because there's so many ways of making it, and there's so many ways of tracking. Some people choose analog, like notebooks. Others prefer apps on their phones. Others prefer uh, Excel sheets, Google Sheets. So when you're making your first budget, usually uh, choose what is comfortable for you. Just in your normal setting, what do you use? What do you feel comfortable with on a day-to-day basis? Do you find that you already like notebooks and you always have one? Then write it in a notebook. Do you find that your work involves Excel sheets and Google Sheets? Then make it in there. Or do you find that usually on your phone and you prefer having an app on your phone? Try different apps and see what works for you. When you're making this first budget, the first month, choose one. It won't be perfect, but stick with that one method. When that month ends, you're like, analyze it. You're like, how did I find this experience? Did you like it? Did you remember? Or are you like, I kept forgetting it here, I kept forgetting it there? Make observations on, like, treat this process of creating your budget as an experiment. You know, try this version, try the other version, and you're like, okay, I like this part of using a notebook, but I don't like this part. So maybe you can use a hybrid. You can use part notebook, part Excel sheet, So that is another aspect of making the budget. And it applies to tracking as well. Because when you're tracking, there are many ways to track and many ways to analyze your spending. So try different versions. There are so many YouTube videos, there are free templates, there's so much information about how to budget, where to budget, but get into look at it as an experiment. Look at it as an experiment, as a way to find what works for you, because the first time you do it, it won't click. That I can assure you. It will take some time to get the numbers right, to start to say, okay, I am starting to see a pattern. I seem to have birthdays every 3 months, or things that don't happen regularly, like that you may not have anticipated when you're making the first budget. That is how you make your first budget, pretty much. So I encourage you to take the leap, start the experimenting process, regardless of which day it is. You don't have to wait for the first of the month to begin. Whatever day it is, look at the money you have in your account and plan and make a budget for that money. If on your account you have a certain amount of money, look at the number of weeks till you're next getting paid, and then you're like, okay, I have 3 weeks. On average, this is how much transport gets me to office. This is how much I spend on breakfast, on lunch, and getting me home. Then you know the budget for transport and food to work is this much. Then look at maybe you have a social get together, maybe you have church and you need to maybe put money a mukabo, and you have a different reverse, put an amount to all those, if you're like, okay, my friend's birthday is this day, put it there. I need to buy food at home, make an estimate. So you can also start making a budget with the amount of money that you have on the account. Something else that you need to keep in mind, the budget is not set it and forget it. You keep adjusting it, because events will come up and you will realize that what you planned is not going to go as planned. It always happens that way. The important thing is to keep revising it, and you're like, okay, let me adjust like this, let me adjust like that. You keep refining it. Even after people have budgeted for years, they are always refining the budget, because life happens and it's okay. We don't there are things that we will never anticipate. That is life. So having a budget doesn't mean that I'm in control entirely of my whole life. No, it's only a percentage. The events of life find you prepared, and you're able to adjust and say, okay, I can move money from here to cover this unexpected medical bill or something like that. So as you're getting into budgeting, those are a few things I can recommend. One, enter it with an experimenting mindset. This is an experiment. It will take you more than 3 months to find what works for you. Two, keep adjusting. Keep adjusting as you go, as the months go by. And then the third thing is you don't have to wait for the first of the month. Start today with the money on your account. And any other income that you receive, that random money you didn't expect, just start with what you have and project for between now and the next payment. Yeah, those are the few tips I can give for starting your first budget. So let me end this episode by sharing with you what's working for me right now. When I started making budgets, I started with notebooks, because I I love notebooks. I always have a notebook with me. So that is where I started my budgeting process. But over time, I realized that I could not analyze the information I was capturing in my budget and my expense tracking through a notebook. That is when I decided to try budgeting apps. So I tried so many budgeting apps until I kind of narrowed down on the one that works for me. And then right now, the one that works for me is called Budget Breakers. It's or the wallet. It has an app on the phone, and it also has a web browser, and they're synced. So the wallet, that is the one that works for me now. So I have an app, and then so the app really, it helps me analyze like summarize things, so I can, if or by at the end of the month, I can easily see, okay, this is the total under one area. Yeah, and then I also now I have an Excel sheet. So at the moment I use three. The Excel sheet is I don't use it on a daily basis. I just use it like I check it every like 2 weeks. That's when I update it, or a month. And the purpose of the Excel sheet is to kind of see it helps me see it on one page, budgeted versus actual. Anyway, yeah, personally I use 3. You don't have to. I just like these things. I just find them exciting. So just find what works for you, and be patient. Take it as an experiment. Just know that initially it's going to be hard and it will take work, but once you've done it, like any habit, it will become more automatic, and then you will keep it at a level of maintaining it as you have more peace of mind, knowing that I have enough money to take me till my next payment without worrying of I don't have enough transport or food, things like that. Yeah, those are my tips for today. Thanks for listening to the end of the podcast. I really do appreciate your time. I hope you found value in this episode. Share with your loved ones and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, you are the CEO of your money. No one else is.